1 tablespoon of olive oil before bed. That's it. No pills, no complicated routine, just something that's been sitting in your kitchen this whole time. And when you look at what actually happens inside your body while you sleep, the anti-inflammatory activity, the effect on your blood vessels, your liver, your gut, it stops being a home remedy and starts looking a lot more like medicine. Now, olive oil isn't magic. I want to be clear about that. But extra virgin olive oil is one of the most studied foods on the planet, and most people have no idea what it's actually doing at the cellular level, especially overnight when your body shifts into repair mode. So let's go through it, system by system. Your body follows a schedule. During the day, it's focused on activity, digesting food, moving muscles, managing stress hormones. At night, it shifts gears. Your liver becomes more active in filtering and rebuilding. Your cardiovascular system works to regulate blood pressure at rest. Your gut lining repairs itself. Your brain clears metabolic waste. This nighttime window is when nutrients matter most because your body is actively using them for repair, not just passing them through. Extra virgin olive oil is rich in a compound called oleocanthal. It also contains oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that your cell membranes genuinely need, and a collection of polyphenols, plant-based antioxidants that have a direct effect on how your body manages inflammation. When you take it at night, on a relatively empty stomach, absorption is efficient. Your body starts working with it within the first few hours of sleep. Let's start with inflammation, because this is where most of the science is concentrated. Chronic low-grade inflammation is behind a long list of serious conditions: heart disease, type 2 diabetes, certain cancers, cognitive decline, joint breakdown. It doesn't cause obvious symptoms in its early stages. Most people carrying significant internal inflammation feel fine, until they don't. The oleocanthal in extra virgin olive oil works similarly to ibuprofen. It inhibits the same enzymes, COX-1 and COX-2, that non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs target. The effect isn't as fast or as concentrated as a medication dose, but it's consistent and cumulative, and it doesn't carry the gastrointestinal risks that come with long-term NSAID use. Night is actually the right time to work on inflammation. Your body naturally produces lower levels of anti-inflammatory cortisol while you sleep. Oleocanthal and the polyphenols in olive oil provide some of that protective activity during a window when your body's own defenses are reduced. If you have joint stiffness in the mornings, especially in your hands or knees, that inflammation is likely peaking overnight. Taking olive oil before bed works with that pattern. Now let's talk about your cardiovascular system. Your blood pressure doesn't behave the same all day. Most people see what's called a nocturnal dip. Blood pressure naturally drops 10 to 20% during sleep. This dip is protective. It gives your heart and arteries a rest. People who don't experience this dip have meaningfully higher rates of stroke, heart attack, and kidney damage. Oleic acid, the primary fat in olive oil, has a direct effect on the flexibility of your artery walls. Over time, your arteries can stiffen, from age, from cholesterol buildup, from chronic inflammation. Stiff arteries can't expand and contract properly, which means your heart has to work harder to push blood through them. Oleic acid helps maintain the pliability of those arterial walls. It also supports the production of nitric oxide, a compound that causes blood vessels to relax and widen. When that happens, pressure inside the vessels drops. Your heart does less work. Taking olive oil at night means those effects are active during the hours when your cardiovascular system is doing its quietest, most restorative work. There's also a meaningful effect on LDL cholesterol, specifically on oxidized LDL, which is the form that actually damages arterial walls. Regular consumption of extra virgin olive oil reduces LDL oxidation. This is considered one of the reasons the Mediterranean diet is associated with lower rates of heart disease, independent of other lifestyle factors. Your liver is most metabolically active between roughly 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. It's clearing out toxins, processing fats, producing bile, and rebuilding proteins your body needs. Olive oil provides direct support for this process. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease has become one of the most common liver conditions in developed countries, often with no symptoms in its early stages. Fat accumulates in liver cells, gradually impairing their function. Over years, this can progress to more serious damage. The polyphenols in olive oil, particularly hydroxytyrosol and oleuropein, help protect liver cells from oxidative stress. They also appear to reduce fat accumulation in the liver over time. Studies in people with early-stage fatty liver disease showed reductions in liver fat and liver enzyme levels with regular olive oil consumption. Your liver is doing significant work overnight whether or not you support it. Taking olive oil before bed gives it something to work with. Your gut lining is thinner than you might expect, just a single layer of cells packed tightly together. That barrier keeps bacteria and partially digested food particles inside the intestine, where they belong. When that lining gets disrupted through stress, poor diet, alcohol, certain medications, it becomes more permeable. Bacteria and inflammatory compounds can move into the bloodstream, triggering a systemic response. Olive oil strengthens that gut barrier. The oleic acid and polyphenols both support the integrity of the intestinal lining. They also have a prebiotic effect, feeding beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, which are important for colon health and whole-body inflammation control. Overnight, when you're not actively eating, your gut shifts into a repair and maintenance phase. Olive oil before bed is working with that process, not against it. People who struggle with acid reflux often find that a small amount of olive oil before bed reduces overnight symptoms. The mechanism is partly coating, partly reduced gastric acid secretion, and partly the anti-inflammatory effect on the esophageal lining. If reflux is a regular issue for you, it's worth trying for a few weeks and tracking how you feel in the mornings. There's also a blood sugar connection that tends to surprise people. Olive oil slows the rate at which your stomach empties. When food moves more slowly into the small intestine, glucose enters your bloodstream more gradually, which means a smoother, lower blood sugar curve, less of a spike, less insulin demand. At night, blood sugar dysregulation, especially if you've eaten a higher carb dinner, can interfere with sleep quality and put stress on your pancreas. Olive oil taken in the evening blunts that curve. For people managing type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, this effect is significant. The Mediterranean diet is one of the most evidence-based dietary patterns for blood sugar management, and olive oil is part of why. It doesn't replace medication, but it works alongside your body's own glucose regulation systems in a measurable way. One more area worth covering: the brain. Your brain runs on fat. About 60% of brain tissue is fat, and the quality of fat you consume affects the health of neurons, the integrity of cell membranes, and the communication between brain cells. Oleic acid is incorporated into the myelin sheaths that insulate your nerve fibers, the same way rubber insulates a wire. Healthy myelin means faster, cleaner signal transmission. Oleocanthal has been studied specifically in the context of Alzheimer's disease. One of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's is the accumulation of beta-amyloid plaques in the brain. Oleocanthal appears to enhance the brain's ability to clear these plaques, including through a process that happens during deep sleep, when cerebrospinal fluid flushes waste from brain tissue. Taking olive oil before bed means oleocanthal is circulating while that clearance process is most active. This doesn't mean olive oil prevents dementia. The research is still developing. But the connection is credible enough that it's regularly discussed in serious scientific literature, not just wellness content. So what kind of olive oil matters and how much? Not all olive oil is the same. The compounds we've been discussing, oleocanthal, hydroxytyrosol, oleuropein, are found in significant amounts only in extra virgin olive oil. Refined olive oil, light olive oil, and most generic olive oil labels have been processed in ways that strip out the polyphenols. The anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects are mostly gone. Extra virgin means the oil was cold-pressed from fresh olives without heat or chemicals, and meets specific standards for acidity and polyphenol content. Look for a harvest date on the bottle, not just an expiration date. Fresher oil has higher polyphenol content. Dark glass bottles protect the oil from light degradation. 1 tablespoon before bed is enough. More isn't better here. Olive oil is calorie-dense, about 120 calories per tablespoon. On an otherwise empty stomach, 1 tablespoon is absorbed well without adding significant caloric load before sleep. Take it plain or with a small amount of water. Some people add it to a small piece of whole grain bread. That's fine, but pure consumption on an empty stomach maximizes absorption of the polyphenols. One honest note: consistency matters more than perfection. The benefits we've covered are not from a single dose. They come from regular, ongoing use over weeks and months. Your inflammatory markers don't shift overnight. Your artery walls don't change in a week. What changes gradually is the baseline, A lower inflammatory load, better arterial function, steadier blood sugar, a healthier gut lining. That's how most real nutrition interventions work. Not a sudden dramatic change, but a steady shift in the direction of health, one that compounds over time. Extra virgin olive oil has been part of human diets for thousands of years, in populations that have historically shown some of the lowest rates of heart disease, metabolic disease, and cognitive decline in the world. The science now has a clearer picture of why. 1 tablespoon before bed isn't a cure, but it's a small, consistent, low-risk action with a meaningful body of evidence behind it. Your body is going to repair itself tonight regardless. This just gives it better materials to work with. And there you have it. Take this knowledge and take control of your health. Thank you for watching.